How many Pythons are on your laptop right now? Most people guess wrong. I asked this machine and the answer was 3. One from an installer years ago, one from a science distribution, and one that came with the operating system. None of them knew about the others. That's a completely normal laptop, by the way. Welcome back. This chapter hands the whole problem of installing Python over to UV, so you never download an installer from a website again. First, the distinction that makes everything else make sense. Interpreters get sorted into 2 piles, and the split matters because it decides what UV is allowed to change. A system Python was already on the machine when UV arrived, so UV will happily use one, but will never modify it. A managed Python is one UV downloaded itself into UV's own folder, which means UV can add and remove those freely. And the headline behavior, straight from the documentation, UV will automatically download Python versions when they are required. You've already watched that happen in Chapter 4. No installer, no website, no wizard. The version you asked for simply turns up. You can name several versions at once, and you can name implementations other than the usual one. PyPy and GraalPy are alternative Pythons with different performance characteristics, which means the same code can behave quite differently on each, and UV fetches either with exactly the same command. Now the command you'll actually type most often. Running UV Python list prints the whole rack. Every line is a version and the right-hand column is the interesting bit. Either a real path, meaning that interpreter is already here, or the words download available, meaning UV can have it in a few seconds if you ask. One detail is worth knowing before you rely on any of this. The interpreters don't come from python.org. Instead, UV uses a project called python-build-standalone, which produces portable builds designed to run from any folder at all. That portability is exactly why UV can drop an interpreter into its own directory and have it work immediately. And here is the part that makes a project reproducible rather than merely lucky. Running UV Python pin writes a tiny file called python-version into the folder you're standing in. From then on, every UV command run in that project uses the version named in that file. Commit the file, and your colleague gets the same interpreter without being told. That file gets searched for in the folder you're standing in and in every parent above it, which means a pin at the top of a repository covers every project inside, and a pin inside one project overrides the one above. Nearest wins, which is the rule you'd expect anyway. 2 behaviors here surprise people, so let's say both plainly. First, UV uses the first compatible version, not the newest one. If your project needs 3.10 or better, and 3.10 is sitting there, UV takes 3.10 and does not go looking for anything shinier. Second, installing a Python with UV doesn't put a bare Python command on your path. That's deliberate, because silently replacing the Python command on somebody's machine is exactly the kind of surprise UV refuses to spring. If you genuinely want that, --default asks for it explicitly. There's a related file, worth not confusing with the pin. The pin says which Python to use. Requires Python over in PyProject.toml, says which Pythons your code is allowed to run on at all, a promise to everybody else, rather than a choice for you. Every command that runs Python takes the same flag, which is genuinely useful when you're checking whether a bug is version-specific. Add --python and a number to UV run, and the whole thing runs on that interpreter instead, without changing anything you've pinned. And once UV owns your interpreters, that Chapter 0 mess starts to clear on its own. Every project names the version it wants, UV fetches whatever is missing, and nobody ever downloads an installer from a website and forgets which folder it went into. Quick check. Your project needs 3.10 or newer, and both 3.10 and 3.13 are installed. Which does UV pick? Pause the video here and commit to an answer before I say it. Ready? 3.10. First compatible, never newest. Managed Pythons come and go like anything else UV owns. Uninstall removes one, list shows what's left, and none of it ever reaches the interpreters your operating system depends on. Which means you can try a release candidate on a Tuesday and be rid of it by Wednesday. So, to recap, UV separates interpreters it merely found from interpreters it downloaded and only ever changes the second kind. A one-line file pins a project to a version and travels with a repository. And UV takes the first compatible version, not the newest one. Next chapter we finally make a real project and read every single file UV writes, line by line.